in these courtrooms, when someone stands up and is fighting this Goliath, trying to stand for the truth and justice, you need to be here. This courtroom should have been packed out today. There were enough people who had noticed today that this was happening, but could not connect the dots to why it was important for them to be here. Well, I'm going to connect the dots for you. Today it's Herb Lux, tomorrow it's you. And you either stand up for someone today, or you will be the victim of tomorrow. And I do want to add an aside that I thought was really spectacular. When Herb Lux went up against Neely on June 16th, I believe it was, and that judge traveled here from I don't know where, because every other judge here had to recuse themselves because they knew that they could not represent the law impartially. So this is the second or third time they had to import a judge into this proceedings because of the corruption in this county. That judge, what was that judge's name?
Judge Pastilnik, and he's from Richmond.
Pastilnik from Richmond.
He was a general district court judge.
When he heard Herb's case last time and indicated to Neely that Herb had him absolutely pinned and he better drop the charges if he knows what's good for him, which Neely did, that judge sat up on his throne, so to speak, and said, well, Mr. Neely, I don't know what your plans are, but if you bring charges, amended charges back against Herb Lux, I would appreciate it if your office or Herb Lux would notify me that you're going back into court together. Because if you are, I'm going to take the day off. I'm going to travel all the way over here because I got to see this. And guess who showed up today to see this? And guess who said he'd come back to see this?
Well, that may say something about his character.
Yes,
he saw something that others haven't.
Exactly.
These other judges
right.
totally wanted to ignore.
Hi, my name is Linda Mattis. I am a resident and a citizen of Fredericksburg. I'm the mother of 11 children. I am very concerned about this justice system, and I'm concerned about the future because I do have children. I have known Herb Lux for many years, more than a decade. I know that he's an honest man. I'm not well educated, but I can plainly understand the codes, and I could understand when Herb was reading to us. Those laws are written for the average citizen to be able to understand.
Properly, we totally dismiss the case, say the state, say it does, thousands of dollars. But the judge came with an obvious bias. It was not only no, but hell no to everything he had to say. Point after point was made, laws were cited, definitions were given. No one in the courtroom had any misconception that Herb was completely innocent. There's no basis of any charge being brought against him, and yet the system, the legal system, not a justice system, the legal system, ground and ground and ground. And Herb did a magnificent job of bouncing back time and time again these bunch of tyrants. I teach a class, the Faith and Freedom Ministry is about teaching a class on the Constitution. We start off with the principles of freedom. Today we saw every principle of freedom that I've ever taught about being violated. Patrick Henry has been here at this courthouse, not in this one, one across the street, and stood up for justice. We see the same justice happening right here again today. Where are the patriots? Where's the patriot? Or where's the Tea Party? Where's the Stafford Patriots? Where's the Constitutional Party? Well, I've seen some of these people here, but the masses weren't here today. If we want to see justice done in this land just like it did in our founding, it will take the people stepping forward, stepping up, being accountable, saying we will not stand for this injustice over and over again. These folks up there, the judge, the prosecuting attorney, they look up there with, I think they got complete impunity because there's not enough of us standing out here, standing up for Herb. Herb has done a masterful job of standing on his own. It's not backed by anybody. He just hates injustice. The rest of us need to get ground up and speak out. And where are our elected representatives today? Where are any of the Board of Supervisors? Where are our delegates? Where's Mark Holden at? Where's King Cuccinelli at? And these people care about justice. All the fine speeches that they give, where are they today when it counts? When you can really stand there and make a difference? You think this judge doesn't know who our elected officials are? Of course they do. But they're not here today. They're absent without leave. They don't care about us, apparently is what they're saying, or they'd be here. So remember this when you go to the voting booth. Who is here today? Find people that care, join yourselves with them, and let's take this country back.
Yeah.
Mr. Neely, like I was trying to point out in there, he does a bait and switch. And this judge totally bought it. He didn't even read, I'll guarantee you, he didn't read, he said he didn't read that case. I will guarantee you he didn't read any of the cases. All he did was take a look at what Mr. Neely said, putting me aside, because Mr. Neely's already branded me as this convicted felon that he prosecuted back in 1994 and brought the false charges which started in 1993. He makes those false representations. Why? Because you attack the messenger, not the message. The fact of the matter, just like them, the only reason Mr. Neely continues with these charges is because when he brought those false charges against me back in 1993, when it originated, he got away with it. And I faced 60 years in the penitentiary at that time. It wasn't easy. I have 8 children, 4 boys and 4 girls. My wife lost her ability to even be able to feed our daughter. She's a nursing mother. That's a terrible thing to have happen to a family. And it was because these guys here think, and obviously they can do whatever they want. They use the power of the purse, yours and my money, all the taxpayers, and they use all that against a citizen. They use him as a Commonwealth attorney, and then he has the other guy up on the bench to stamp everything he does.
So that's sort of like they're getting salaries, but you aren't.
That's exactly it. They're getting paid for playing their games and ruining people's lives. Mr. Neely, I hate to think how many lives he's ruined. That's sad, and that's one of the reasons why I kind of feel bad that maybe I didn't take stronger action before. Because this man, I hate to think of how many people's lives he's ruined. With impunity. He doesn't care. If there was a devil, if somebody was on the devil's payroll, so to speak, it would be Mr. Neely. Because as I tried to point out to the court, and he totally ignored, in his pleading, he puts in there, he sprinkles truth in there. You can't get people down the wrong road unless you sprinkle the truth. Here in that one specific motion that I filed having to do with a juror, he mentioned that I was referring to the Damas and whether they were a jury after January 31st. And he said that would be a factual issue to bring up at a trial. Well, that would be a factual issue to bring up at a trial, so that was truthful. Except as I try to point out to the court, my motion was on its face. It said something very simple. What is the lawful, to recognize the lawful definition of a juror? Something so simple. And here we couldn't even get that done in this court. That's pretty sad. And it should scare everybody. Because, together we can do something. But I believe it's only going to happen with you, and I thank you all for coming here, and the good Lord's help. Without that, we're not going to make it.
Mr. Lux, I'd like to ask you about the false charge regarding trespassing and that bogus law that they're basing it on. You could clearly see as you showed the law had nothing to do with the charge.
No, and that's what bothered me is the original charge of trespassing is a 18.2-119 of the Code of Virginia. Now that charge was dismissed. Mr. Neely obviously, well, all the charges are false, but he felt he was really in trouble with that trespassing charge, so he dismissed it on January 31st with a null pros. He brought back a charge of 18.2-121, which has to do with entering on the property of another to cause damage. But he continues to use the name or the words unlawful entry / trespass. Well, why is that? It's because he wants to misrepresent the fact that to make it appear like there's a trespassing charge before the court when there isn't. So anybody that reads those pleadings would think it's a trespass charge when in fact it's not. So
did you notice that he said that they used that particular provision or law many times?
Well, the provision of law is fine, but when you read it, that's why I put it up on the screen.
But they must have been using it in the wrong way.
Oh, yeah, well, what he's doing, he's mischaracterizing what the statute is. It's not a trespassing statute. What it is, it's like if you go onto somebody's property and you damage their building or whatever it is, which it refers to, that's unlawful to do that. It's just like it is unlawful to go into a business to steal from it. It's unlawful to go into the bank to rob it. In other words, it's not unlawful to go in the bank, right? But it's unlawful if you go in the bank and then rob something.
But he never cited anything in the bill of particulars about any damage.
He didn't. What's really appalling here, as you all probably noticed, when I asked to define the who, what, when, and where of these charges, I don't even know who I violated the obstruction of justice charge. He's got the statute in there, but how can I defend myself when in that it just says obstruction of justice of an attorney, a judge, or this one or that one, and you don't know who it is? It's an impossible task.
So that's the bill of particulars with no particulars in it that you mentioned, right?
Yes. In fact, an indictment under the Constitution, under the Constitution of the United States, the Sixth Amendment. I think it's Article 1, Section 8 of the Virginia Constitution. You're guaranteed right to call witnesses and to face your accusers. I don't even know who my accusers are. It's the Commonwealth bringing these charges. They're the accuser, but they're supposed to be a complainant. I don't know who it is.
There's supposed to be a who, what, where, and when, right?
Exactly. The who, what, where, and when I mentioned in that Pine case, which is a Supreme Court case, specifically says that you need to be appraised of what your charges. He mentioned in that motion, and you heard me probably say that. Here, Neely files a motion, or I file a motion for discovery. He files back and gives me a proposed order to be signed by me. And it mentions in there about an alibi that I need to notify the Commonwealth attorney of what the alibi is. How is it possible to say what my alibi is when I don't know who it is, when it happened, where it happened?
And they're alluding to an alleged trespassing event that occurred, but there was no trespassing signs. You had never even met the individual that owned the property. It never told you to stay off the property.
No.
Pennsylvania judges that recuse themselves from presiding over this case. What's that all about? What does that tell us?
Well, see, what I'll tell you this. I'll tell you what happened here. I understand. Now, Judge Levy, I caught him in an ex parte communication with Judge Levy. Judge Levy and Neely. Neely filed an email with this Judge Levy asking in another hearing to have my witnesses not subpoenaed. I couldn't believe what I heard. When I talked to the clerk of the court in the General District Court, I said, how are you coming with my subpoena? She said, well, Mr. Lux, the judge said I could only subpoena one. I had subpoenaed 4 witnesses. And I said, well, that's illegal. I said, you need to cover yourself, so make sure you stamp the records and everything, because I said, he can't do that. Well, that was on a Monday, the 28th of March, as I recall. On Tuesday, I called Kyra back up. She's the clerk of the General District Court. And I asked, I said, how are you coming with my subpoenas? She said, well, Mr. Lux, as I said, we can't, the judge's not going to issue them. And I said, can you send me a copy of that? She said she would send me a copy. Well, I reiterated in a letter to the clerk that day that if they didn't subpoena my witnesses, it would violate my rights under the Constitution of due process. You're entitled to call for your witnesses, obviously. Well, when I checked with her on Wednesday, Judge Levy of the General District Court had recused himself, which seemed kind of odd because the hearing was coming up on April 4th. Well, what had happened is she had taken that letter to him, pointed out that maybe there's something more to this and Mr. Lux isn't going to take this sitting down, right? And so he decided to recuse himself, and then they asked the Supreme Court to call in another judge. Well, that was on Wednesday, so I get a call from the Commonwealth Attorney's Office saying they were trying to send me some information. I said, well, it's no problem. I'll be down there, and I'll pick it up. Well, what that was, it was an official motion to quash my subpoenas. Now, that's legitimate, where you can file it into court. I get a copy, we go before the court and argue it. But the reason for that is Mr. Neely was covering up the illegal actions that had already been granted on the 25th, the previous Friday, by an email conversation. He had already denied my request for to have these witnesses subpoenaed, totally contrary to the law. When I pointed that out in court, like I did today, Mr. Neely said, I made a mistake.
Can you briefly go over that email again?
Yes. Okay, the email on the 25th of March, I sent a letter requesting 4 witnesses to be subpoenaed for my hearing on April 4th. So on Monday, I wanted to call and find out how they were coming with the subpoenas because the hearing was going to be a week from that Monday. So when I called the circuit or the judge,
What was on the email?
What was on their email, it responded to that. I found out on Monday what it was. The email asked Judge Levy to not subpoena these witnesses because I didn't need them to come
Who asked
forward.
Judge Levy?